Okay, good morning. Okay, so here we are on our day where we're going to have the first content in class and online. The Learning Catalytics code is on the screen. You see it right there, right front and center in the middle of the screen. When I leave this screen, you'll have to ask in the chat room, but right now the code is right there. The session ID, by the way, is unique to every class period. So when I have the class at 9:15 today, it'll be a different session ID. You'll have a different session ID next week. Speaking of next week, the university does not have classes on Labor Day. When I said we would have class during snow days, we do not have class on schedule, so we do not have class Monday. Okay, the university is closed. It is a holiday, so the next time we'll have class after today is next Wednesday. So today we are going to start on content. So some reviews to start with. Any device that has a web browser, you'll need Learning Catalytics. If you're physically in the classroom every day, you need Learning Catalytics. Learning Catalytics you can access on your laptop or any device that has a web browser. You have to be registered for My Accounting Lab. Today is still practice. I have not uploaded the practice scores for everyone yet. That should happen within a few days. So some scores are up in My Accounting Lab, some are not. But today is still practice, so it does not count per se. For real is Wednesday next week. But what you'll want to do today is make sure that when you submit an answer that you see after a few seconds it says your response has been hidden. You want to make sure it accepts it, make sure that you can log in, those kind of things. So Learning Catalytics session ID is on the screen. There is a question up. Every class period that we have, I will have Learning Catalytics open and available for question answering about 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes before class starts. And then that first question stays open a couple minutes. And sometimes we go over the answer and then it still remains open a couple of minutes. So you have a couple minutes leeway, kind of, on getting to class on time. And then once we start another question, that first question is closed. So there is a question right now up there. And I'm going to, let's see, where are we right now? We've got 114 students logged in. So we've got 114, not sure how many I have here, but we have 114 logged in. If you're not logged in, you need to get logged in. But I also, out of the 114 right now, only 87 have answered it. So that tells me that there's several people who have logged in have not answered the question. It is a one-sentence question asking for a one-word answer. So when you join Learning Catalytics, of course, you're putting your session ID in. Okay. Okay, so after I leave this screen, you won't have the session ID on the big screen anymore. Amir will continually paste it into the chat room. And you may think, why can't people coming in late just scroll up? The way Blackboard Collaborate works is that if you log in, you see none of the chat prior to when you log in. So that's why he's going to continually be pasting that into that chat room. So if you arrive to class late, you'll need to get on Collaborate and ask for the session ID. So you can see it on the screen if you're in here. Okay, so I'll come back to that. So there's still a question out, Learning Catalytics. You want to get your answer in. What's due this Saturday? We do have 2 items due this Saturday. Both are in My Accounting Lab. The first one is a course intro quiz. The course intro quiz is over what we talked about in class Monday. If you were not here Monday, the recording is in Blackboard Collaborate. The recording is also on YouTube. There is a YouTube channel for this class, so you can watch that. So that course intro quiz is over what we did on Monday. It's over the course in Blackboard, the information that's available there, maybe over some information in an announcement. You get a maximum of 2 attempts. Your grade on that course intro quiz is the average of your 2 attempts. If you do take it a second time, know that the second time the questions can be slightly different, answers can be scrambled. So when you take it that second time, don't say, oh, I saw this before, the answer was A. It probably won't be A because it gets scrambled each time. So just pay close attention when you take it. Don't just assume it's the same as what you saw before. So this week you have course intro quiz in My Accounting Lab, 2 attempts. That's due Saturday. I say at 11 p.m. Saturday. You also have Chapter 1, Part 1 homework. We're going to do some homework problems in class today. They will be very similar to what's due this week. These assignments in My Accounting Lab this week, very, very little time. Know that this is not going to be the representative of the rest of the semester. This week, very light, your big job this week is to make sure everything's registered and you can do it. Reminder, there are no makeups on late quizzes. If you miss a quiz, that's one of your 3 drop scores at the end of the semester. You can do homework late, however, you lose 10% per day late on the parts that you're submitting late. So, and these both are available in My Accounting Lab now. Yes. Yes, the question was about the quizzes. Your score is the average of your 2 attempts. So if you got an 80 the first, I'm repeating for people online. If you take an 80 and get an 80 on the first attempt, you get 100 on the second, your score will be 90. That said, most people are getting 100 on the first attempt because you can look up the answers, you can watch, if you need to go back and look something we talked about, you can do that. So it is there. So, okay, so then My Accounting Lab. You need to register for My Accounting Lab if you have not already. Right now, out of about 650 students, I think there's about 100 students left to register. So that's pretty good. A lot of you have registered. On Saturday, so the homework's due Saturday night. You can do the homework for this class tonight. You can be done with it. There's no need to wait. This will be a very, very light week in terms of concepts, difficulty, time required, very, very, very lightweight this week because we're going to go over homework today. And I think today is probably the only homework that is very, very, very similar. I don't think we have numbers today, if I can recall. So the answers we go over from class today are pretty much the answers to the homework. So it's one of those easy homework weeks. So you don't want to miss this one. You don't want to do it late because you do get 100% if you do it. So, but backing up here. Saturday, I work all the time, Monday through Friday. If you've emailed me, I hope you've gotten a rapid response. I tried very hard to get back to you as quickly as I can. That's Monday through Friday. On the weekends, I'm not babysitting my emails so much. And I'm certainly not Saturday night at 11 o'clock sitting on my email waiting for questions about how you register for My Accounting Lab. And I don't mean to be flippant, but the reality is it's Saturday, especially Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. Your chances of getting help Saturday night are very slim. So what I would urge you to do, because register for My Accounting Lab before Saturday, because then if you have any questions or need any help, you can get help. Certainly Saturday, if you try to do it and you can't do it, there's tech support. You can contact them. Again, it is the first week of classes in many, many schools across the country. So tech support's a little bit backed up sometimes. But if you could just register for My Accounting Lab before Saturday, you'll be good. I doubt seriously that you will need help with the homework this week. So just know, it's not that I don't want to help you, but if I try to work 7 days a week, I get really crabby about day 6 or 7, so I need a little bit of downtime. So even though the homework's due Saturday night, please understand that I may not respond to emails on Saturday night or Saturday late afternoon, okay? Okay, so we have the course intro quiz, Chapter 1, Part 1 homework. All assignments are in My Accounting Lab. Okay. And you typically don't have quizzes every week. This is kind of an odd one because it's the first week. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So let's see. Okay, so we have a question in Learning Catalytics right now. We have 151 people signed in. I have 148 answers. I'm going to close it now because it's been open quite a while, okay? And I've just pushed out this cloud to you. So for the benefit of the recording and people that don't have it, the top answers that I'm seeing are excited, which is great, that's wonderful, nervous, and I totally understand that. This week is a great week for you to build up some confidence. You can get 100% on the homework. Learning Catalytics is for practice only, so you can make sure you know how it works. The quiz should go pretty well. So you'll build up some confidence. Next Wednesday, we have a full class planned. So if you're nervous, know that that's absolutely common. If you're nervous about anything, you need to email me and we can talk. I can help you, but I can only help you if I hear from you. Good, interested, great, confident. Okay, those are great. And then I see some confusing. That's when you need to ask the questions. You can ask me questions before class. I'm always here early. So I know we start at 7:45. Getting here early is a lot. But if you are here early, I'm happy to answer any questions once I get everything set up for class. So scared, again, open up the communication channels. I am happy to talk with you anytime. So do that. So, okay, so we have answered that first question. So good. So we've got that first question, and so we're actually going to start the class. Okay, so we're going to start talking about accounting and why we take it. So accounting is typically known as the language of business. We have to have some way to talk about how we did, what we're going to be doing, and since almost everything we do requires resources, accounting is a way of keeping score and allocating those resources. Again, I would tell you these PowerPoints are on Blackboard. You do not need to memorize what I'm saying here. A lot of times, too, I'm pointing out exhibits. This exhibit is in the textbook. So, okay. So what we see is we make decisions, we have transactions occur, and then companies report their results. And this class is all about how do we get those results. When I look at an annual report for a company, what goes into that annual report? Companies all use the same rules to do that reporting, so we can compare company to company. So what we're going to start out with as an overview in this class, we're going to start out by looking at the financial statements briefly. We're going to look at the income statement, the balance sheet, and look at those and see kind of what information is on them, and that's like Chapter 1. And then we're going to look at transactions. If you had accounting in high school, most of what you did in high school is going to be covered in Chapter 2 and part of Chapter 3, and then we'll be on to new stuff. So, and then what we do the rest of the semester is we go into each part of the balance sheet and then end up at the income statement and then statement of cash flows at the very end. And then we can look at a company's financial statements and you understand kind of where those numbers are coming from. Because as a manager, no matter what your major is, what your aspirations are, you are going to run into budgets, you are going to run into decision making, you're going to run into scarce resources, and you need to understand the impact of your actions on the company's financial position. Many times, your company's survival depends on financial stuff. Your bonuses and how you do at work depends on financial stuff. So that's why we have to study it. So we start out with the financial statements, kind of an overview, and then we get really deep into the weeds. Like, here's how we record transactions, because you need to understand when you purchase, if I go out and buy a company car, what's the impact on our financial statements? If I pay $30,000 for a company car, that doesn't reduce income by $30,000 this year. It's going to reduce income by some amount over some period of time, but we'll talk about what happens for that. if you pay people to work in your factory, how does that impact income? So we'll be looking at transactions because we want to understand how they impact our overall financial condition. Okay, so who uses accounting information? We have individuals. As individuals, as a manager, I can use it to run my business. As an individual, I have accounting information to fill out my tax return, right? Because I'm going to put my income on my tax return. I'm going to put my expenses on my tax return. Investors and creditors, certainly, they use financial information. You see news about earnings releases all the time. Investors use that information to decide whether they're going to buy or sell particular stocks. Creditors, if they're going to loan money, if they're going to get a bond in a company. Okay, regulatory bodies, meaning the SEC. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, regulates every company that issues public stock. So companies are governed by the rules of the SEC. The IRS is a regulatory body. They certainly use income and expense information. Okay, nonprofit organizations. So nonprofit organizations have to use accounting information to run their organization. Even though they're not going for a profit, they still have scarce resources. No one has unlimited resources. People need to make decisions about how to use those resources and understand the impact of those decisions. Okay, now there are two types of accounting. Most of you, well, if you're a business major, you will take financial accounting, which is what this class is, and you will take managerial accounting, which is what the next semester is. If you're not a business major, some of you will only have to take this course. But here's the difference. Financial accounting, what we're doing in this class, is about how we prepare financial statements. The bottom line is, here's my financial statements. Here's my income statement. Here's my balance sheet. Here's how I did for the year. And those are publicly communicated. Those are public information. We're talking about publicly held companies. So I can go and I can look at Amazon's financial statements. I can look at Apple's financial statements, and I can kind of see how they did. That is financial accounting. Financial accounting, very much rigid set of rules. If you're an accounting major, so in this class, very rigid set of rules. You do it this way. Here's the rules. Everybody's the same. It's black and white. If you're an accounting major, as you go on up to higher levels of accounting, like corporate accounting, then you get into gray areas where you have to interpret, and it is quite interesting at that level. So in our class, financial accounting, very black and white. Here's the rules. Everybody's going to do it the same way because we need to be able to compare Amazon's financial statements to Walmart's financial statements, for example. We want to be able to compare companies so that we can make decisions about investing, about creditors. You, as individuals, when you go to work for a company, it would be really nice before you agree to work for that company if you could look at their annual report and have some idea, looking at that balance sheet, looking at that income statement, how are they doing? Are they viable? Do they look viable right now for the long run? Is this a company I want to join? So that's financial accounting. It's very much about external users. Managerial accounting is about, on the other hand, internal users. So this whole class is about this publicly disclosed financial information. Managerial accounting. When you get to managerial accounting, this is now, you're taking on the role of a manager in the company, and you're saying, what information can I use to make better decisions? Managerial accounting information is not publicly released. It's proprietary. It's about the cost of products. How do you come up with the cost of the product? If my product is building tables, okay, so we could talk about this. If my product is building tables, I can say, well, I've got wood in the table, I've got the metal frame, I've got the wheels. Those all make sense. Now, so that's very clear in terms of the cost of that product. On the other hand, I know to build this table, I need electricity, right? I need to be able to see to build it, so I need electricity. But I'm also building benches and signage and all kinds of things in my factory. So how much of the cost of the lighting goes onto the table? And that's one of the questions we talk about in managerial. And the answer is it depends. It depends what you want to use the information for. So managerial accounting is much more free-form. It's much more what's relevant to that decision right then, whereas financial accounting, here's this set of rules. Okay, most people tend to find managerial accounting a little bit easier because it is more intuitive. Remember that financial accounting is a set of rules that's been developed over time to say this is how you do it. It's like keeping score in a complicated game. You all have to do it the same way. So you have to learn those rules and those concepts. Managerial accounting, it's what makes sense for you. Managerial accounting, you might say, how many do I need to sell if I'm selling bicycles, for example? How many bicycles do I need to sell to break even? And that's very intuitive because you know what your costs are, you know how much you make on each bike. That works. So if, I don't know, of the two classes, I love both classes. I taught managerial accounting for 10 years, and now I'm in a streak of teaching financial. So I like both classes, but just observation there. This class, by the way, very, very doable. A lot of people do very well at it, but it does require work. There's no two ways about it. This week, not so much. So this week is a nice week to ease into it. Next week, it's going to take a lot more work. But it's very doable. It will not consume your life. If you're spending hours and hours and hours spinning your wheels, you need to reach out for help before you get to that point where you're totally frustrated. So, okay, so let's see. Okay, so I'm going to throw out another question there. Okay. Okay, so this question is in Learning Catalytics right now. What's due this Saturday? This is a choose as many as are due. Okay. So we have 161 people logged into Learning Catalytics right now, just kind of keeping, I have 108 people who have responded. And today, again, is practice. It's for real next week. Okay. So you're kind of getting a feel for how long this will be open. So this question's open. And this one, what's due this Saturday? We've talked about it. So I'm going to close it in about 10 seconds. So if you haven't put an answer in yet, you'll want to. Right now I have 150 responses out of 161. Again, this is a response in Learning Catalytics. Will you paste the session ID in the chat window in case people need it? Oh, good. I am glad, Bethany, you asked that question. Did I miss question 2? I should bring that up. See the question number at the top, question 3? That's unrelated to anything. I have to queue up Learning Catalytics with my PowerPoints. I put the questions in PowerPoints just so they're in the recording so we can see them if you watch them later. Otherwise, you're not going to see them. So I have to have some way to get to the questions to identify that I'm doing the right question in Learning Catalytics. So these numbers that you see are not really relevant to anything. They're only relevant to me. So question 3 does not mean the third question today. It just means that's what question I have to pick when I send it out through the Learning Catalytics. So yes, and I'm going to answer the question. So Zachary asks, will most classes run this way with lectures and randomly asking questions through class? Yes, because what I'm going to be doing with the questions is once we get more into the content, I'm going to be throwing out questions about the content. So I'll talk about it a little bit, then you'll answer a question, and then we'll go back and forth. It really makes it more engaging, and it helps focus, because if I just go on talking for an hour, you're going to zone out very rapidly. So this is kind of like, whoa, pay attention here, because this is important stuff. And certainly knowing what's due this week is important. Okay, so we have 164 people logged in. We have 158 responses. You want to make sure during all of this that you have answered the question. You'll see after you answer it, you'll say see your response has been hidden. Want to make sure you're not one of the 4 people who have not answered. So I'm going to stop this one right now, and I'm going to show it. Okay, so you should be able to see it both on your device and on the screen. You can see most people got it right, so just a reminder that this week, yeah, there probably isn't any question too, just to be clear on that. So I'm not, the question numbers were the order that I entered them in Learning Catalytics, which is not related to how we're going to go through them ultimately. Okay, so remember this weekend you have homework due, you have a course intro quiz due. We will send out a reminder on the remind.com text this morning, later, right? Okay, and I'll send a reminder out. We're not going to remind today. We'll send a reminder out like Friday, just reminding you what's due, and we do that through the announcements feature in Blackboard, and we'll do it through the text message feature also, so whichever one you prefer. Okay, so, we have another question. I'm going to send this one out. So this is related to what we just did. Which of the following entities do not use financial accounting information? How do I sign up for the text message feature? If you go on Blackboard, right on the home page of our course, there's a link like 2 or 3 lines down. It'll show you how to do it. Okay, so which of the following entities do not use financial accounting information? Investors, creditors, the public. Okay, we're going to close this in about 10 seconds. So we've got about 20 people left to answer. Okay, I need to ask right now, so I'm waiting for people to answer. Does anyone in this room need tech support, tech help for anything? Somebody want to go over here? Anyone else? Because we have tech help sitting here. They're enjoying learning about accounting, I'm sure. Okay, now I'm going to stop this one now. So 5 people have not answered, okay? And the answer on this one is all of the items above. So if you're following along, so what I'm saying about you can get them all right. Obviously today is practice, so it doesn't matter. Hopefully you get this right. If you have the PowerPoint slides, a lot of times like this one would come right out of the PowerPoint slides, and we just talked about it. So they're not going to be hard questions, and so nothing to stress over as long as you're in class and working through it. So let's see what's up next. I'm going to take that one, that last question, about how do we check to make sure you're getting our answers. You mentioned double checking on Monday. Yeah, you're going to be able to check sometime in the next few days in My Accounting Lab that your answers from today or Monday came through to My Accounting Lab. I'm waiting for a Blackboard switch. It's not My Accounting Lab. Because My Accounting Lab is linked to Blackboard, there's a little switch that I'm waiting for an engineer somewhere to flip. But as soon as I do that, I will upload the practice scores. You will see that, and I'll send an announcement out once. Some of you have the scores in Learning Catalytics to check or in My Accounting Lab. Others do not, just because of that one switch. So you can't check it yet. As soon as it's there, I'm going to send an email out and tell you, go ahead and check in My Accounting Lab. We have class Wednesday next week, so before Wednesday, you'll be able to check and make sure. Okay. Okay, now organizing a business. So now we get to different forms of business. So accounting, we do accounting for all forms of business, and we have 4 main forms of business. The first one is a proprietorship. The proprietorship is that individual mom or pop store. It's one person owns it. They just hang out their shingle and they go into business. So it's one owner. They're not incorporated, and the proprietor, that sole proprietor, is personally liable. So if I go out and I offer my services as a CPA, as a sole proprietor, and let's say I make a huge mistake, I am personally liable. Clients can sue me for my personal assets. Everything's up for grabs. Okay, that's what makes a sole proprietorship so stressful, because there's no separation. You've got everything on the line. On the other hand, if I'm in business for myself and I'm a sole proprietor, other than following the laws of the country and the state that I'm in, I don't have to answer to anyone. I can do what I choose to do. Partnerships are 2 or more owners. And that's great because you bring more talent in to the partnership. And partnerships are personally liable as well. So if you are thinking of going into business with someone and you say, well, why don't we do a partnership? Understand that in just a partnership, if you form a partnership with someone, you are both personally liable for everything. So if your partner commits you to something, or your partner does something wrong and the partnership gets sued, the people suing you can come after both of you. So there's double the amount that they can go after. Okay, and then an LLC. An LLC is a limited liability corporation. Let me come back to LLC. I'm going to go to corporation. Corporation, if you incorporate, you have stockholders, and you generally have many owners. You could have a corporation with one owner, but you have many owners, and the stockholders are not personally liable for the corporation. The most that you can lose in a corporation, barring illegal, negligent activity, the most that you can lose is the amount of your investment. So you're not personally liable for the corporation. Now, an LLC is a limited liability corporation, so you can organize as an LLC, and this, as it says, limits your liability. There's also things like limited liability partnerships, and you can limit your liability that way. So we have LLCs, LLPs. They're relatively new, and they're a way that you can limit your liability. What we're going to do now is we're going to do one of the homework problems, actually. Okay, so homework problem. Okay, so this one. Now, we have Taylor Signs Needs Funds, and Taylor Stamp, the president, has asked you to consider investing in the business. Answer the following questions about the different ways that Stamp might organize the business. Explain each answer. So A, what forms of organization will enable the owners of Taylor Signs to limit their risk of loss to the amount they have invested in the business? So our main choices here are going to be sole proprietorship, then partnership, corporation, and then your LLCs or your LLP. So in this case, we're talking about limit the amount of loss to the amount they have invested in the business. The answer is going to be corporation, LLC, or LLP. So this homework problem is in your homework. This is one of the ones that doesn't change numbers because there are no numbers in it. And this is what I was saying, this week's homework will be pretty short and easy. So what forms of organization? Corporation, LLC, LLP. Now the next one okay, what form of business organization will give Stamp the most freedom to manage the business as she wishes? That will be proprietorship. And then this next one, okay, this next one I just put out in Learning Catalytics, so it is a question. What form of organization will give creditors the maximum protection in the event this company cannot pay its debts? Okay, so let's say the business is going out of business, what form of organization is going to give creditors the maximum protection? So you have that choice of proprietorship, partnership, or corporation. Again, so this question, right now I'm looking and 90% of you have this wrong. Okay, so it's pretty safe to say we need to adjust our thinking here. We're looking for the maximum protection for the creditors. We are not looking for what protects the owner. We're looking for the creditors, the people who have loaned money to the business. As a creditor, what's going to give you the most protection? Meaning, where's the deepest pocket? You know, because you can go after, if this business fails, you need to go after, you're going to be in bankruptcy, you're going to be lined up. Where are you going to have the most assets to go after? Okay, so let me talk about this here. Okay, the answer is actually partnership, and I expected a lot of people because that's your inclination. So what you're going to do now in Learning Catalytics is you're going to change your answer. I haven't closed it yet. Okay, so you want to change your answer. Today, of course, it's practice. It doesn't totally matter, but the reason this is partnership is if this business goes out of business and you're the creditor, you're going to sue to get paid back. And when you sue to get paid back, do you want to be able to sue one person that owns it or two people? I'd rather sue two people because there's more money available potentially. The more partners, the more people to sue. Not that this is a good idea, but this is just, as a creditor, you would prefer to have more people lining up to be able to pay back the business's debts. Okay. Okay, so let's go on. So now we're getting into the underlying accounting concepts, assumptions, and principles. So there are a couple acronyms we use a lot in accounting. The first one is GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. GAAP, U.S. GAAP, is what governs these accounting rules that we use. It's been developed over time. The main organization driving U.S. GAAP development is FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board. Always pronounced FASB, but FASB formulates GAAP. So FASB has a board. The board is comes from a lot of different organizations and firms. It's a nonprofit organization, and FASB issues accounting rules, basically, and everybody has to follow U.S. GAAP. When we're studying accounting in here, we are going to be studying U.S. GAAP. When we talk about accounting, you want to take a look at Exhibit 1-3. It's going to talk about things like the fundamental qualitative characteristics of accounting, that it's relevant, that we're reporting information that makes a difference. And spatial representation, do I even have it? Yeah. That represents what's actually going on in the business. Again, I would look at Exhibit 1-3. We're not going to read all of this right now. Okay, now there are certain assumptions that go into everything we do in accounting, and these are important to know. We have the entity assumption, we have the continuity assumption, historical cost principle, and stable monetary unit assumption. Okay. So starting, we're going to go through each of these, and then we have a homework problem where you have to pick these. Anybody know where this is? Recognize it? Yeah, downtown, Franklin Square Deli, right? That's Carl, the owner of Franklin Square Deli. So when we talk about the entity assumption, Carl has Franklin Square Deli. So Carl has the individual, his personal finances, and he has the business. The entity assumption states that Carl's personal stuff is separate from Franklin Square Deli financial statements. So whether Carl is a sole proprietor or corporation, they are still, from an accounting standpoint, two separate entities. So we have Carl the person, and we have Franklin Square Deli the business. So if Carl goes out and buys a car for his personal use, that is his car. That doesn't go on the business funds. He can't just dip into the business funds and use it for personal. They are two separate entities. We have different tax returns for each of those entities, but these are two separate entities. Okay, we also have a going concern, a continuity assumption. When we say a business is a going concern, we mean that that business is going to be in business for the foreseeable future. So we think about, say, Apple. Apple is a going concern because there isn't any real doubt that they're going to go on into the foreseeable future. On the other hand, Borders Books and Music, they ended up going out of business. At the tail end, there were a lot of news stories about Borders struggling. They were not a going concern. When we do accounting, when we use U.S. GAAP, we are assuming we're doing it for a going concern. At the end, Radio Shack, they were not using U.S. GAAP at the end, regular rules, because the assumptions are built for companies that are going concern. They're going to be in business. If bankruptcy is looming, the accounting rules change, basically what we need to know. Okay. Historical cost principle. Anybody recognize there? Scribbles, right? Okay. So what I've got here is I've got the sale price. You can go to the Portage County Auditor website and basically search for any business or any real estate. So this is actually 237 North Water is Scribbles. So we looked at the historical cost, and you can look at the auditor's website, and you can see on September 24, 2003, that property was conveyed to the owner for $145,000. Okay, so the owner paid that. That is what that property is listed at on that owner's financial statements. That's valued at, that Scribbles building and land is valued at $145,000, or listed, recorded at $145,000, because that's its historical cost. So let's say downtown Kent has done wonders and things have done, there's all kinds of activity down there, and let's say that Scribbles building is now worth $200,000. From an accounting standpoint, you do not change that amount on the books. That cost, that historical cost of the building is what it's recorded at, and that's what it stays at. And that generally governs everything. It's recorded at what we purchased it at. There are some few narrow exceptions when we're talking about stock, basically, investments on the market. There's some revaluation that goes on there. But when we're talking about a building, we're talking about a car, we're talking about things like that, what we purchased them for is their historical cost, and that's what they're recorded at. Okay, and a stable monetary unit means that we can use GAAP when we have stable monetary. So we have inflation, 2, 3, 4%, whatever. That's considered stable. It would have to be double or triple digit inflation before we get concerned about our accounting. We do not adjust accounting numbers for inflation under stable monetary unit assumption. So those are our assumptions that govern what we do for accounting. We don't adjust for inflation. Okay, now we have another body called the International Financial Reporting Standard, International Accounting Standards Board develops International Financial Reporting Standards, better known as IFRS. So several years ago, we have U.S. GAAP, okay, and then every country has all different gaps of their own. So as the economies go more and more global, it's difficult to compare companies from different countries. So there was a movement 20 or 30 years ago, they formed the International Accounting Standards Board, and the idea was to say, let's make one set of accounting gaps for all countries. And so that's where IFRS came from. Now, IFRS is used by probably 2/3 of the countries in the world. The U.S. does not use IFRS. They've worked on some projects together, so there's many things in common with U.S. GAAP and IFRS, but there's many things not in common. The reason the U.S. has not adopted IFRS is it would be a huge cost to U.S. companies. It would also mean U.S. GAAP is much more developed than IFRS in terms of more advanced, it covers more situations, and the feeling is we'd be going backwards in time to accept IFRS. You can argue both sides of the coin. There is no right or wrong answer, but so what companies are allowed to do in the U.S. is they can choose IFRS if they choose. They don't have to. They have to use, and this is the SEC saying this, they continue to use U.S. GAAP. I think over time, IFRS and U.S. GAAP will become the same thing. It's just going to be a long, slow process. Okay, so this is FASB. FASB is located in Connecticut, and IASB is located in London. And this is a plug. If you're an accounting major, total aside here, if you're an accounting major, you have the opportunity to go to Paris and London on a 2-week study abroad course. You have to have completed this class and be an accounting major, and there's scholarships for it. And the reason I have this slide up here is I went 3 years in a row. I started the program, and this is actually our students at the International Accounting Standards Board in London. So if you're interested in study abroad, just know that if you're an accounting major, we do an awesome trip to Paris and London every May, and I did it for 3 years and passed it off to someone else, so they're doing it for 3 years. So we kind of rotated around the department. It is the single best thing those students feel that they did their whole college career, and the scholarships in the past have been about $2,500, so it covers a large cost of it, and it counts as an accounting elective, and it is a wonderful experience. Okay, so short exercise 1.5. I'm going to run through this one. This is on your homework. First one, inflation has been around 5.5% for some time. Woodlake Realtors is considering measuring its land values in inflation-adjusted amounts. This isn't asking if it's okay or not. It's asking what assumption is at play here, what would govern this. And what's going to govern this is going to be the stable monetary unit. You cannot, as an aside, you cannot adjust your land values for inflation. Not happening. You assume a stable monetary unit. Even though we know inflation exists a little bit, we don't, because if we were to adjust for inflation, it would open up a whole other can of worms. Okay, you get an especially good buy on a fax machine, paying only $300 when it normally costs $800. What's your accounting value for this fax machine? The principle that covers there is historical cost. You record what it costs. You record it at its cost. Burger King sold a store location to McDonald's. How can Burger King determine the sales price? So when they're recording the sale of the store to McDonald's, how do they determine the sales price? The professional appraisal, Burger King cost, or the amount actually received? Again, we're going to use the cost, the historical cost that's at play. What did they actually pay? And then General Motors, stable monetary, I'm going to answer that one. Sorry. Did you just look it up? I'm going to answer the chat room question. Sorry. I like that one. I'm going to, okay. Someone just asked, can you elaborate why number one is stable monetary unit? Stable monetary unit states that we do not account for the impact of inflation. So number one is just saying that stable monetary unit assumption governs number one. You cannot adjust for inflation because of the stable monetary unit. So that's why that is. Okay, So General Motors wants to determine which division of the company is more profitable. To make your divisions, you're going to use that entity assumption. So this one, it's just saying what assumptions at play, not what's the right answer to do, is this legal or not, what assumption, what main assumption governs there. Okay, now we get to probably the most fun thing we'll do today, the accounting equation. Now, accounting equation is fundamental to the whole class, to the whole semester. So this is one of those things we need to know for everything. So to do that, okay, so you'll see my drawing. I'm not a good artist, and we'll also see I, for whatever reason, don't have an eye. So let's talk about what I own. So I'm going to talk about this in personal terms, and then we're going to convert this to a business accounting equation. So let's talk about what I own. Okay, so first of all, let's say I have $1,000 cash. I also have a house, and let's say it's $100,000, and let's say I have a car for $5,000. So these are the things that I own. Those are assets. So I own this cash, I own the house, I own the car. And when I add all of those up, my assets total $106,000. Okay, so not too bad so far. Assets are things that I own. Okay, so my assets total $106,000. I'm using the historical cost on these things. So I have assets totaling $106,000. Now let's look at what I owe. So now this is looking at what I owe the bank. Let's say I have a $60,000 mortgage on my house, and I have a car loan for $3,000. So what we end up with here is my liabilities total $63,000, right? So I have that house loan, and I have the car loan, so $63,000. So just as a reminder, my assets are $106,000. I owe $63,000. So when I talk about net worth then, assets $106,000. Liabilities meaning what do I owe people. So now when I say how much net worth do I have, how much do I really own of everything, I could say it's $43,000. Okay? So what I've just done, and that makes sense. I have what I own, what I owe, and the difference is my net worth, or how much of those assets I really own. Okay. So when we talk about businesses, what's owned are assets, and these are very short, quick definitions. We'll get into bigger definitions later. What is owed is liabilities, and the difference is not called net worth, it's called equity. Okay? All assets need to come from one of two places. Assets need to come from liabilities, money that you borrowed, or equity, that's what your net worth is. So it comes from people who have invested in you, and it comes from reinvesting your earnings. So businesses, from a business standpoint, they have assets, liabilities, and equity. It's no different than an individual having assets, liabilities, and net worth. But we call it equity because people can invest in businesses. So all your assets have to come from liabilities and equity. So when you look at a balance sheet, we're not there yet, but when you do look at it, the balance sheet will have assets. So that's what the business owns. The balance sheet will have liabilities. That's what it owes in terms of debt. And it will also have equity, which is what people have invested in the business, and it's accumulated earnings, all the earnings to date. And all those assets have to be funded by liabilities or equity. So when we get here then, okay, the accounting equation is assets equal liabilities plus equity. You absolutely need to know this. You're going to see this over and over and over. The balance sheet is a visual representation of the accounting equation. Okay, so all assets are made up of, have to come from liabilities or equity. Okay, So now we're going to look at some more examples. So from a business standpoint, our assets. Okay. Assets, the technical definition, it's in your book, but the definition are economic resources that are expected to produce a benefit in the future. So an office building is an asset. Okay, so economic resources that are going to benefit the future. So here's obviously cash. Cash is a good example of an asset. This is a coffee roaster. It's actually in a little shop in Paris. So that is a coffee roaster. That is an asset to that business. Inventory. When a business is offering things for sale, like suits for sale, that is also an asset. Okay, so liabilities. So liabilities are the technical definition, a debt that's payable to an outsider. Wages that are owed to employees. So you have payroll. Payroll ends on Friday. The payroll period ends on Friday, and you get paid a week later. During that week, that business has a liability, wages payable. Other examples of liabilities, accounts payable. This is Wordsmith before it went out of business. With Wordsmith, when they would buy boxes of copy paper, they would pay within 30 days. They pay their invoice within 30 days. So that invoice that they have when they get the paper delivered, that invoice is accounts payable. It's a debt they owe to other businesses typically. A business can have a mortgage. So a mortgage loan could be mortgage payable, it could be loan payable. So if we go to the hometown bank and we take out a loan, that is a liability for that business. Okay, and then finally equity. Equity is probably the hardest one to understand because it's not as easy to point out. But equity are the insider claims of a business. We can call equity lots of different things. We can call it stockholders' equity, shareholders' equity, those mean the same thing. Owner's equity. If we have a sole proprietor, if we have one person that owns a business, it's called owner's equity. Okay, but they mean the same thing from an accounting standpoint. Sometimes we call it capital. Student loans are absolutely a liability. That is correct. Your student loan is your personal liability. Okay, stockholders' equity is made up of two main components. It's made up of something called paid-in capital and retained earnings. Paid-in capital is like common stock, and we're going to go a lot more into this in later chapters. Okay, so then paid-in capital is common stock. The other thing is retained earnings. Retained earnings doesn't represent anything that you can point to, but retained earnings is this running total of all our accumulated earnings to date, less any losses and less any dividends. So we're looking at this retained earnings. Are we, how have we done over time? Okay. So when we have the accounting equation, it's assets equal liabilities plus equity. So it's just like the personal situation. So we are going to do, and before we go any further, net income, just to define net income. Net income is revenues minus expenses. The reason I have the word loss in parentheses is loss is negative. Loss is if your expenses are greater than your revenues. So revenues minus expenses are net income. So you've got two main equations from today. You've got assets equal liabilities plus equity. You've got net income is revenues minus expenses. Net loss is if it's negative. Okay. When we measure income, income can be for a month, it can be for a year, a quarter, it can be for a year. Okay, so question, I've just pushed a question out. Again, question 8, the 8 means nothing. The accounting equation consists of all the following types of accounts except what? So what's not in the accounting equation? Okay, so you have a question in Learning Catalytics right now. You need to answer it. Out of 170 students, I have 140 responses. I'll keep it open for about another 10 seconds. The accounting equation consists of all the following types of accounts except, so the accounting equation you just wrote down, assets equal liabilities plus equity, okay? Which one is not considered part of that? Anyone need any technical help? Everyone online fine? Okay, someone asked, are these PowerPoints available on Blackboard? I should tell you, they are available on Blackboard. Know that these questions are not in the PowerPoints on Blackboard, nor are the homework questions, because when we go over the homework problems, I can't do screenshots and comply with copyright. But they're on, you can do screenshots as we go through and collaborate. You can also, by the way, just a reminder, when you're doing your homework, if you need to, you can always come back to the recording of the class and go to what you need as well, okay? So I'm closing this question. Okay. And you can see 76% of you got this right. That would be one that I would expect. I'm assuming that it's only 76 right because we're only doing participation right now, but that's the kind of question you can see. We just went over the answer. In fact, I gave you the answer as we were talking there when it was open. So these are the kinds of quiz questions you'll get, so you should be able to get them right. So going forward now. So what we're going to do now is we are going to do we're going to do the accounting equation. We're going to apply it. So if assets are $500 and liabilities are $200, what is equity? Okay, so we have this accounting equation. Okay, accounting equation, assets equal liabilities plus equity. So assets are 500, liabilities are 200. What is equity? Okay, the answer is going to be $500 for assets equal $200 plus equity. So then you can subtract $200 from both sides, and you end up with equity being $300. Okay, now you're going to need to be able to manipulate that accounting equation different ways. So if I gave you assets and equity, you could solve for liabilities. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a homework problem, and it actually is one with numbers this week. This is short exercise 1-1. Yeah. Okay, so this short exercise, what we're given is we're given 3 situations. We have situation A, B, and C. And what we need to do is we need to solve for the missing number. So situation A, the problem has this little box with question marks. So I just repeated it down below so you could see it. We have total assets equal total liabilities plus total stockholders' equity. That's our accounting equation. We've added the word total in, but that's fine. So assets are equal to liabilities plus equity. So for A, pretty easy to do that one. You're just going to add the $320,000 plus the $340,000. When you do this one, you may get different numbers on your homework, and you simply need to add for A, total liabilities plus total equity. So we get $660,000. This also, by the way, is a really good one. Sometimes I put it on exams. Okay, so that same problem that you see on homework can show up on exams. Exams aren't just multiple choice. Okay, situation B now. Situation B, we have total assets, 135,000. We have total liabilities, 57,000. So what's stockholders' equity? And what stockholders' equity there is we will take the total assets, subtract total liabilities, and we get 78,000. So we're taking our assets minus our liabilities to get the equity. And then the third situation is we have assets of 401,000. We have liabilities unknown and total stockholders' equity, so we have to solve for the missing one. Okay, and that's going to be 45,000, and that's taking assets of 401,000 and subtracting stockholders' equity of 45,000. Okay, we're going to do a question now. Okay, I'll get this. Okay, so in this one, you're going to have to enter a number. Do not put a dollar sign in your answer, just the number. So if liabilities are 500, assets are 1,200, what is equity? Okay, so liabilities $500, assets $1,200. Put your answer in. I'm going to close this in about 10 seconds. Now, as you're going, so we have liabilities 500, assets 1,200. Okay, so your accounting equation is assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity. So what you're given is you're given assets, you're given liabilities, so then you have to solve for stockholders' equity. Oops. Okay, so the answer is 700, and how you're going to get it, and I think I pushed out, you can see the calculation in there. Sometimes on the math ones, when I show the answer, you'll get the calculations right in Learning Catalytics then. Okay, so that's an example. So I will virtually guarantee that when we start class next Wednesday, the question that you come into is going to be one similar to this. You're going to have to use the accounting equation. Accounting equation is so huge in what we do. It's a representation of the balance sheet. The balance sheet, you already know what's on the balance sheet now. It's assets, liabilities, and equity. That is the balance sheet. Those are the accounts that are on the balance sheet. So what we're going to do now is I think maybe I should okay, this is where I want to end up. Okay, so we're coming to the conclusion of class. This week in My Accounting Lab, you have a course intro quiz due. You have Chapter 1, Part 1 homework due. That was over the 3 homework problems that we just did in class. It should not take you very long. You need to register for My Accounting Lab before the weekend in case something goes wrong. But other than that, please let me know if you have any questions. We are to the end of class. I will email you when you can check to see your Learning Catalytics scores in My Accounting Lab, and today is practice only. So have a nice long Labor Day weekend. We do not have class Monday.